Okay, so I don't have a set plan for this quite yet. I'm sort of just winging this as I go. Never a good sign, but you know, that's what I'm doing. So my basic plan for this is I'm going to heat this up in the forge, of course, and then just kind of hammer in a lot of these ridges a little bit. I want this to be smooth. Usually I leave them rough, like that one that I've used as a throwing knife for like a year. But I think for this one I have it like kind of polished out a little bit. So I don't want this to tear up any of my belt sanders or anything like that, and it definitely will. After that, of course, I'm probably going to take one end and hammer it down a little bit, just so it's gives me a little more room to work with, and so that way these aren't sticking up quite as much along the edge. Beyond that, I'm mostly going to be cutting it, and of course reheat treating it when I'm done. But I don't want it to have too much deviation from this original pattern. I don't know if you can really tell about this old one. Again, this one's really rough. If you remember me forging these a long time, like over probably a year and a half ago, at least as of me working on this, I've been using this throwing knife, just beating the hell out of it. So, yeah. Anyway, really kind of, the pattern doesn't quite go straight because I forged it out that way. And you can also tell like the tip of it is made from this area here, and then I just cut down so that way all this is still the file part. What I'll probably do instead is cut out my blade somewhere along here and then cut this area into my tang. I probably won't quite go full tang because I want to be, I want to have the handle completely going around, unlike this one where it's, the whole width of the handle. I just want the tang going through like the old medieval knives would be, but I don't want to have a pommel, so I'm not going to do that. To anyone who says, it has to be full tang and all that, usually I would agree with you, but considering this was going to be probably more of a display piece as opposed to an actual, wet knife or whatever you want a Bowie knife for, like I've done with this one, I've abused the hell out of it. So it's not going to be as big of a deal. And I'll still mostly be full tang, just not 100%. And again, with knives, it's not as big of a deal as swords. Still, you want them to be decent, but anyway, that's enough about tangs. We could probably, I'm sure you could probably debate it all day, depending on who you're talking to. But anyway, I'm just going to hammer these down just a smidge, kind of hammer out at least part of my edge. I probably won't, I won't go all the way, of course, because I'll just grind that down. Hopefully that'll work. If not, I have more of these and I'll just hammer it like I did the rest. But yeah, I'm going to quit talking and start working. Okay, so you really can't tell, but I have kind of roughly drawn out my design. Basically, I just have my tang. It's pretty straight, but since I'm going to be chiseling it out, I'm, going to want it to be as straight as possible. And you can't really tell up here because I kind of made a mess of it, and still not 100% sure how I want to go about doing it. So, plus it's really hard to draw on this with a paint marker. So yeah, it's still kind of winging it as I usually do, but basic strategy, cut it out, then just take I'll probably take my angle grinder, and maybe not. I might start with a sanding disc, or not sanding disc, but a belt sander. Start smoothing things out and see where that gets me. because I don't need to really dig in like I normally would. I just kind of need to sand off the tops of these. So hopefully that won't take long, but then again. Okay, now that we have our blade sanded out, I think it got kind of a nice look. Forgive the fact it's a little wet. Try to keep it cool because it's warping, but it's got a good shine to it. This is just through the belt sander, which is 120 grit. I can't really get any more sanding belts around locally that go any finer than that. Thank you, Midwest small towns. Anyway, so now I'm going to go ahead and make the guard for it, and then a wood handle. The guard, I'm just going to take a piece of whatever piece of steel I can find lying around that I think is going to work, and probably forge the two ends, probably cut a slot in. I thought about forging it, but I think with as thin as it's going to be, cutting will probably be my best option. And thin mild steel usually is pretty easy to file, so I'm not too worried there. And then I'm going to take it, hammer it down a little bit, and have one part curling down, and the back curling up. Kind of make it a little fancier than I normally would. And then for the handle, I'm going to take oak, gonna chisel out a slot like I used to do, glue them together, and then I'll have a hole drilled through for a brass pin, which will be a 3/16 inch rod. Again, what I can get, well, not really locally, but sort of locally. Not important. But with this knife, it's not going to be quite full tang. As you can see, usually I'd have this set to be peened out. And with the way it fits in my hand, like my hand is actually holding the whole tang, so it'll go most of the way through, but it'll kind of have something else down here that won't be in. For a knife like this, that should be fine. And again, since it's not a sword, it's not as big of an issue. And it will go most of the way through, so it should be all right. Again, this is going to be more of a decorative piece that can be used as a knife as opposed to a knife that just happens to look nice. So full tang isn't 100% necessary. Probably more preferable, but the way I'm making it, better this way. Also, that's why I'm chiseling it out as opposed to heating up and burning it like I normally would, because I don't quite know how it's going to react if the tang stops most of the way through. I don't want to burn it any deeper than necessary. Since I can't just shove it in a little farther to compensate for it, I'm just gonna chisel it out. Plus with the oak, that's pretty easy. Now that I have my blade heat treated and my guard forged, I'm going to go ahead and make the handle. Now I decided I wanted oak since I want this knife to be more unique and have a more defined shape, and it's also not going to be something that I'm going to, hammer into the side of a tree like I do with some other blades. So it's supposed to be more a fancy type knife, sort of. I mean, scrap metal. But, anyway, not important. So I selected this piece of aged oak from my shop. It's been on the floor and been in here for a while. Again, the technique I'm using, I don't really do very often. Usually, I just burn out the center, or I take a piece that's already exists, cutting in half, and just gluing it on either side. But this one, I'm going to chisel out the tang, so it's a little more challenging than what I'm used to. Not really what I'm used to. This is actually probably easier because this is what I used to do. And that's not important. I'm getting off subject. Anyway, I have this piece of wood that is warped and kind of moldy in places. Not really moldy, I think it's more just water stained. This is what your basement looks like when it floods. But there are places that are pretty straight, and I think once it's chiseled out and then glued, it'll be just fine. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go get my... where did I put that? Oh yeah, I should put it away for one. I'm gonna get my jigsaw, cut out a chunk, cuts this up pretty easily, especially compared to the hickory that I like to use. Hickory is a lot stronger than this is, but this chisel is a lot better and it's a lot easier to work with. So that's what I'm going with. Also, this usually has a better wood grain. You can kind of see through the watermarks, which do sand out. I tried a little bit, just some scrap stuff that it will sand out, and by the time I'm done, you won't even probably notice, especially once I add some stain. So, gonna cut myself off a chunk once I get done talking, and trace out where my tang's gonna go, and chisel that out the hard way. Okay, it's probably using drilling and burning, so drilling through hickory. Okay, now that I have all my pieces made up the way I want, I have to do some finishing touches on this. Usually I would do that before I mount it with this style, but since I'm using JB Weld to glue the pin in, and I'm gonna have everything held together with this brass pin. So, yeah, I figure I need to sand it afterwards so I can clean that up as much as possible. But other than that, basically just need to assemble it. Got this nice and sanded out. Nice and shiny. It looks really well. Like usually I leave this rough, but I really like the way it looks when kind of polished out. Other side, about the same. But this is the like snake scale side everyone likes. So I usually use that as kind of my main show, I guess. And that is how you make a sort of ish hunting knife out of a farrier's rasp. This looks way nicer than like most other knives I make. So yeah, I kind of like how this turned out. So yeah, although I'm gonna put some linseed oil on that, but it's just gonna be the same as I did with the wood stain. Put it on, let it sit. So pretty straightforward, but well, hope you enjoyed, and hope to see you next time.